Hello and welcome to Rafe's Reviews. This is the part of the week where we go through the weekend's action, have a look at some of the predictions that Joe and I made on last week's pod, and see how we got on. We're going to start with Friday evening's game. Southampton hosted Leicester in what proved to be a historic game of football. The highest winning margin for an away side in Premier League history, equaling the highest winning margin in Premier League history, was of course 9-0. Joe and I both predicted Leicester wins. We both had one goal Leicester wins. So we won't be taking any points from that. With regards to Leicester, I think that is a real statement of intent for where they're going to stand this year. At the start of the year, I predicted, well, not at the start of the year, at the start of our pod series, I predicted them to finish in the top four ahead of Arsenal, and right now that looks a pretty safe bet. That's absolutely huge from them. I think anyone that questioned, look, obviously it's not a fantastic Southampton team, and I think they've got their own issues now. They find themselves 18th. They're in the drop zone, and things. When Hasselhoodl came in last year, there was a massive lift in Southampton. They looked really good for a few months, right up towards the end of last season. But this year they've really struggled, and I think at this stage we can start throwing his name in with managers that whose heads are on the chopping block alongside Marco Silva. Poch. Solskjaer's got a couple of wins recently, so he might be alright for a little bit. But things are not looking good for Southampton at all. And things look very good for Leicester, and of course with no European football this year to distract them, I really think that they will go all the way. The Saturday afternoon games then, or the Saturday morning game, afternoon, was City Villa. City ran out 3-0 winners. Joe had 4-0, I had 5-1. Both 4-goal margins, so unfortunately neither of us taking any points from that one either. A routine win for City against a relatively decent Villa side. But I mean, there's not a whole lot of teams that are going to go and upset City in the Etihad this year. I know Palace did it, but I wouldn't expect to see too many losses there at all. Brighton hosted Everton in a game that Joe predicted would finish 1-1 and I predicted would finish 3-2 to Brighton. It did of course finish 3-2 to Brighton, so that's 1-0 to me. Everton are hopelessly inconsistent, and I've been saying since we started this pod that Brighton are one of the most underrated teams in the Premier League. I've been really impressed not only with the way they play football, but their resilience that they've shown in recent weeks. We had highlighted that they were maybe underachieving based on the expected goals and based on the possession they'd had and the chances they were creating. And I think in recent weeks we've kind of seen that balance out a little bit, and they're starting to fulfill their potential now. I don't think they'll finish anywhere near the bottom of the league where they are now 13th, and I wouldn't expect them to drop any lower for the rest of the year. They're quite a handy football side, especially at home. Everton have a hopeless away record of late, they're in real trouble. Watford hosted Bournemouth in a game that finished 0-0, the second of two consecutive 0-0s for Bournemouth. They have serious trouble scoring goals on the road at the minute, something that they did so well. I think Callum Wilson at one stage was looking like breaking records for goals away from home at one stage. But they are really struggling at the minute. I know that they tend to be up and down. They since they've come up, they've had patches of really good form and really terrible form. And I wouldn't go as far as calling them terrible, but they're really struggling for goals. They find themselves now, where are Bournemouth in the table? Bournemouth are ninth. Yeah, no issues for them. They're doing all right. No crisis at all. But Watford are still without a win in the Premier League, rock bottom. Their chances really don't look good. They're already on their second manager of the year, and I don't know how long they give him before they go to number 3. He's definitely in contention for the sack as well. So West Ham hosted Sheffield United in a game that finished 1-1. We both had West Ham wins down for that, so neither of us will take any points there. I didn't actually see the game. I've not much to say about it. West Ham, for all of the promise that they showed in the first few weeks of the season, really haven't lived up to that at all. I think I backed them to finish 6th or 7th, and they find themselves now 10th. So they're not 100 miles away, but they really haven't been fulfilling their potential of late. I said Sheffield United are incredibly resilient at home. Another side that have been playing good football, but that's a really, really good point on the road. And Sheffield United now find themselves 8th in the Premier League. I don't think anyone expected to be saying that at the start of the season. Actually, we'll stay with them for a second because I do want to talk about Sheffield United. A team that I think most people would agree have the weakest squad in the Premier League in terms of names and players and recognised internationals. I don't think anybody really gave them too much of a chance this year coming up. But the way that they play together, the way that they're organised is an absolute credit to their manager and everything that is going on at that club. That seems to be a club going the right direction, run the right way. Similar to the way that Wolves came up last year and looked really, really impressive. I know Wolves have a bit more financial backing behind them, but it's great to see football clubs being run the right way. Burnley hosted Chelsea in a game that finished 4-2 to Chelsea. Joe had gone for the shock upset of the week, 2-1 to Burnley he predicted, and I actually thought it would be a 0-0 draw, so 6 goals. We were both very wrong. And this Chelsea team continue to prove the doubters wrong and keep laying down markers themselves, and Leicester I think will find themselves comfortably adrift from Arsenal and the chasing pack within weeks. I think that top 4 is going to be absolutely stitched up by Christmas. It's just a matter of who and where they've been the respective teams finish within it. Chelsea look really, really, really good. They had a ropey 5 minutes at the end of that game. They conceded an absolute worldie and a deflected goal. I know Joe questioned their defensive toughness, and I'm not too sure. Well, look, for the first one, the man could have been closed down. But for the second one, there's not much you can do about that. I think, yeah, Chelsea look really, really good. Burnley be disappointed not to have taken a point off them, but I don't think that's a game that they would have targeted as a 3-pointer, probably not even a 1. On Sunday, Newcastle hosted Wolves in a game that Joe predicted would finish 0-0 and I predicted would finish 1-1. The game, of course, finished 1-1. 3-0 Joe with 3 games to go. Yeah, I did watch a lot of this game. Newcastle were quite poor. I started watching it after they had scored and before the red card, and they really, really didn't offer much. I really, really worry about that team. I know that they find themselves 16th in the table. Wolves, with that draw, move up to 12th in the table. Obviously, with the European football, Wolves wouldn't have expected to replicate the season they had in the league last year. They're not miles off, and they'll see that as a good point away from home. But I mean, Newcastle, that was a game with Wolves playing on Thursday that was there to be won. That was there for the taking. Having been a goal up, I think the Newcastle fans will be bitterly, bitterly, bitterly disappointed about that. Yeah. Arsenal, Palace. Joe had predicted a 3-1 home win, whereas I'd gone for a 1-1 draw. I'm going to give myself that for the draw, putting me on 4-0. Obviously, there are a couple of major talking points coming out of that game about Granit Xhaka and Unai Emery. I think Joe's going to do a feature piece either today or tomorrow about that, so I won't talk at length about that. I'm sure we'll discuss it on the pod next week as well, because it's absolutely massive, but we'll talk a little bit about the football. Palace continue to not scalp them, but to take points off the big teams away from home. And it's a credit to Roy Hodgson that Crystal Palace still find themselves 6th after 10 Premier League games. We're over a quarter of the way into the season and Crystal Palace are still 6th. They're not doing anything special. They're not pulling up trees. They are hard to beat. I know Arsenal had a couple of chances and they probably should have had a penalty laid on as well. Or they had a goal disallowed by VAR. We spoke about VAR last week, and I think that it's reared its ugly head again this week. Major issues for Arsenal. They're still obviously 5th in the league. They're ahead of Palace. They're ahead of United. They're ahead of Spurs. Most importantly for their fans, but I think there are a lot of Arsenal fans at this stage calling for Unai Emery out. And we know what they can be like once they get started. So we will see we'll keep an eye on that one as it unfolds. Like I said, I'm sure Joe will talk a lot about Arsenal this week, so I don't want to get too bogged down. But I do really, really want to praise Crystal Palace. I know, again, they should have conceded in the last minute, but to come back from 2 goals down in the Emirates and get it back to 2-2 is commendable. Liverpool Spurs. Joe had predicted a 3-0 Liverpool win, and I had predicted a 4-1 Liverpool win. Liverpool did, of course, win 2-1. So we won't. We both had 3 goal winning margins, so there's no points to be had there. This was a game that, despite Liverpool not playing well again, and I know people will argue that Liverpool did play well. They had so many shots on target. The Spurs goalkeeper was brilliant. We did do a lot going forwards with the ball, but Liverpool continues to look vulnerable at the back. They are a totally different team to the team that played last year and the team the year before that. Klopp, when he came in, brought this free-flowing, end-to-end attacking football. You know, we'd have games where it was 4-3, 5-4 regularly. Do you know what I mean? Goals were flying in for fun. He decided that they needed to get a little bit more defensively stable, and we saw how they played last year, keeping obviously the best defensive record in the league and having Virgil van Dijk nominated for the Ballon d'Or, etc., etc. They were defensively phenomenal. I don't think it's just Joel Matip that they're missing. Lovren, although there's not a huge amount he could have done for the first goal, but I mean, if he gets enough on it to block it, he wants to block it away from goal. They don't look the same unit defensively. I'd prefer to see Joe Gomez playing ahead of Dejan Lovren, and I think Lovren got caught out again when Heung-min Son went past him, and probably should have won the game for Spurs at 1-1 when he hit the crossbar. I think Spurs fans would be bitterly disappointed to concede a penalty in the manner that they did. It was, of course, obviously a penalty, but I don't think it was an intentional foul from Aurier. I didn't even think that he saw Mane coming. But I mean, the fact that Serge Aurier is on the pitch, there's always a risk of something like that happening. I think that the golfing class was exposed. If you look at Liverpool's fullbacks, they're absolutely streets ahead of Spurs fullbacks. The midfield, like this, and Ndombele was meant to be the best thing since sliced bread, and he's coming off the bench. Lo Celso gets a few minutes at the end of the game. Like, Dele Alli, yeah, sure, he had a good game last week, but I mean, what's he really done over the last 2 years? He's not done much to warrant a starting place, and I would have been sickened if Liverpool hadn't won that game. They didn't play to their potential, and I think Spurs overperformed at times, especially their goalkeeper was phenomenal. Game could have been 3 or 4-0 at half time, but it wasn't. Liverpool didn't kill it off. Spurs had a couple of good chances, and Liverpool stay 6 points clear at the top of the league. Spurs drop down to the bottom half. They sit 11th. Worrying times for them. I think that it's for two teams that met at the end of last season in the Champions League final, separated only by 1 league place. It's incredible to see the difference in the two teams this year. One team has progressed really and kicked on from that, and the other team has gone backwards. So worrying, troubling times at Spurs with so many players approaching the end of contracts and a new transitional period happening. I think it'll be another few years before we see that Spurs team challenging, if they ever actually did that again. Norwich Man U. Joe had predicted a 2-1 Manchester United win, and I had predicted a 2-1 Norwich win. Manchester United did, of course, win 3-1, missing 2 penalties. United in penalties this year, you couldn't write it. But I think it's interesting to note, and I know Norwich are still missing a lot of players. I know they maybe got a bit too much credit. People got a bit knee-jerky and carried away with Norwich at the start of the year. They're not a great team. Norwich are now 19th in the league. And United move up to 7th with that win. So it is funny how things change. But United with Martial back in the team do look different. They were really, really unlucky to lose him at the start of the year through injury. He did seem like their best attacking player, and they do seem like a more cohesive unit while he's there. They still have Pogba to come back into that team. So it's not all doom and gloom for United for a change. And it'll be interesting, really, really interesting to see if they can actually build on that and take some form with them into the busy Christmas period that obviously we're coming into. Because if they can pick up if they can put together a winning run and Arsenal don't sort out their issues, they could well find themselves behind United very, very soon. And I don't think Joe will be laughing about that one. Anyway, guys, the final score today was Rafe 1, 2, 3. Yeah, we're going to share Spurs. Rafe 3, Joe 1, meaning it's 2-0 in the series. I'm actually still unbeaten at this 100% record. So, Joe, better luck next week. I will talk to you on camera at some stage, I'm sure, and over the phone. Peace, guys.